Hi everyone, Mr. Silbaugh here, and this is my take on Unit 10, Lesson 6. Alright, so in the last lesson we talked about databases and how they can help your business by storing inventory or by allowing users to submit information through forms. When they submit information through the form, it gets deposited into a database so that you can access it and use the information later for whatever you need to use it for. In addition, we also talked about the web server technologies that may aid in a business's database. So today's lesson is going to cover two parts, and I'm going to go quickly, but this is going to be a rather long video and a rather long lesson. So keep that in mind. Take a break if you need to, but we're going to move through it because there's a lot of good content to cover here. The first issue is we're going to talk about optimizing the impact of the web page. So when you make a web page, you want to make sure that lots and lots of people come to visit it, especially if you're working for a business or a company that needs that steady stream of people coming to visit the website. So as we talked about before, a high ranking in the search engine means that you get more hits per month. And if you have more hits per month, then you have more traffic. And if you're selling something, the more traffic you have, the more likely you're going to sell stuff. That's important here, okay? SEO techniques are used to get web pages to be picked up more by search engines, applications, and we call those bots or spiders. Those bots or spiders will go ahead and scan your web pages and index them and create little copies of them so they know what's on them. The pages are then analyzed and then they are ranked according to relevance, okay? Your whole goal is that when that little application comes in and scans your web pages, you want to make sure that it is perfect and that it will be picked up by that bot and then it will be added to the search engine and hopefully give it a higher ranking. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So in order to get search engine relevance and increase your SEO, you need to do the following. Okay, this is not a complete list, nor is it 100%, but this is just some techniques that the text provides. First is how many hyperlinks from other sites point to a page. So if you have other websites that link to your page, that's great. It's definitely going to increase your SEO ranking. Not to mention, if you have lots of links between your pages that all point to different pages, that will also increase your SEO because you're allowing that information to go back to your web page. Okay, you want to make sure that you have plenty of hyperlinks that on your page that either go to other websites or that other websites link back to you. That's important. Next is how informative the page is. How much information is actually on it? Okay. When someone looks at your page, is there a lot of information on it, or is it very, very dull and bland? Okay. The more information that's on it, the more likely it's going to be picked up. Next is how well a page's code is structured. You want to make sure that your coding for your web page is sound, makes sense, and is using best practices. You're more likely to be picked up if your code is very, very well done. Okay. Next is how often content on the page is updated. This is important. This is an easy one. If you're regularly updating your web page, your SEO ranking is going to increase because that page is constantly being refreshed. This could be as simple as posting new articles, or it could be doing a page update, whatever. Okay. Next is how fast the website is loaded. If you have your code done correctly and everything on your web page is sound, like you don't have very intensive graphics and things of that nature, if your page loads quickly, it's more likely to be ranked higher. And then how friendly the website is with mobile devices. This is important as well, especially as we move more towards mobile devices displaying pages. You want to make sure that your pages can be picked up by mobile websites, and that's going to be important because the more accessible it is for a mobile device, the more likely people are going to use it because that's what people are using now. Some other search engine relevance tips. Now, these also aren't in any specific order. Forgot to mention that on the last slide, but these can be, there's multiple ways you can do these, and we'll talk a little bit about this in the next slide. Next is how many keywords are there in the content. Remember, we talked a little bit about keywords in the last couple of lessons. Those search engines will pick up keywords that are on your page, and if you have a good amount of keywords, the more likely it's going to be picked up. Next is how many times the page is visited. Search engines will keep track of the number of hits that a page gives, like how many people click on that link in the search engine. So if it has a higher ranking and more people are visiting it, it's going to bump the ranking up. And then lastly, how much time visitors spend on a website. The search engine will also be able to measure how long people will spend on a website, and if people are spending more time on it, the more likely you're going to get a higher SEO ranking. So there are some techniques that I mentioned in the previous slide that are even unrelated to SEO, and these are just good practices that are going to help, naturally build your SEO ranking. Using properly validated HTML, applying CSS, and structuring your pages correctly. A good, well-designed website leads to more people coming to visit it. Makes sense, right? So that's something you need to keep in mind when you are trying to bump your SEO ranking up, is that if you have a well-designed page, it's going to increase your ranking. All right, that was the first lesson I'm covering for today. The second lesson is much longer. This one is all about front-end issues. And when we talk about front-end issues, we talk about interface issues. There's the back end, which is your server, your network, your databases, all the behind-the-scenes stuff that your users won't ever see. The front end is your interface for information. And you have multiple ways to structure your information, such as tables, forms, paragraphs, so on and so forth. This section talks about all of the issues regarding the stuff that people actually do see. So first thing we'll talk about is properly created pages, and this is important no matter what. The first one is accessible to all users, including those with disabilities. We've talked about this time and time again. It's a recurring thing, and it's not going to go away. You need to make sure that your pages, whenever you design for everyone, you're truly designing for everyone. Make sure you incorporate images and graphics tastefully, but not over the top. You don't want anything too flashy, and at the same time, you don't want anything that would cause people with disabilities not be able to recognize those graphics or interpret them. You also want constantly updated hyperlinks and content. Remember, we talked about dead links. That's a no-go, and you want to make sure that your links work and that you have content that's updated regularly. You use your tables wisely. Remember, in our unit of tables, we talked about using information and not using structure. Back in the day, the early days of HTML web design, tables were used for structure, and it is highly suggested you don't do that anymore because there's other ways that you can format it, mostly through CSS. Next, carefully designed forms. If you do decide to include a form, make sure it's well designed and not over the top. You want to make sure that your people that are accessing your information or need to fill out that form are doing so easily and are able to complete it without any major help. Securely attaching the pages to databases. So if that information from a form is going to be submitted to a database, you want to make sure that it goes to that database securely. Or if you're accessing a database from your website, you want to make sure that connection is secure as well. We talked a little about that in the previous lesson. Some other issues about properly created pages, you make sure you use appropriate current technologies. In the last unit, we talked about current technologies that can really help build your web design up. Make sure you use your images properly and wisely. You don't want to go over the top with those. Make sure you have easily navigable websites and no dead end. That's the worst thing that you can do, is have a user get into a dead end. And also provide alternative navigation links, especially for your users with disabilities. You want to make sure that they are able to navigate your site very easily without having to, go to a web page and not be able to navigate around it. The text talks about image maps, which is a great way to do navigation, but you should also have hyperlinked text, which will help users with disabilities be able to access your page easier. Now remember, you have no control over how users will access your pages, what browser they'll use, where they'll go on your pages, and how fast their pages will load. But keeping in mind that creating a properly created page and making it well designed is more important than how your user is going to use your pages, okay? You have to do everything correctly. They have to do nothing correctly, okay? You have to make your page done correctly, no matter what, all right? So keep that in mind. You are the one that sets the page, not the user. The user can give you feedback, but if it's not a consistent issue, then it's not going to be something you really need to worry about that. So if you do decide to go into web design, keep that in mind. You need to go above and beyond for your users. Go beyond what is recommended and go beyond what they would need, okay? Keep that in mind. Good advice. The text also mentions about sitemaps, and we talked a little bit about this in previous units. Sitemaps allow for, can show site structure and allows visitors to see a summary of the page. It's essentially a nice list of all of the pages in your website. Useful sitemaps have a topical hierarchy, which means they have an outline of the pages and visual format, starting with your home page and working down into the individual pages. Okay. It's recommended you don't just include an image, okay? You can make it an image, but if you're going to do an image, make sure you provide hyperlinks so that people with visual challenges can still see it. Aptly named site sections, make sure that if you do branch your website into sections, it's going to be named appropriately and correctly so users can find what they want quickly. And you also want to include some search capability as well. You can have a search engine box on the sitemap. You can either do that yourself, where you're searching your own pages, or you can have a partnership with Google. You'd have to look into more of that. But you can have a search engine on your website. So if people can't find what they're looking for your sitemap, they can find it through the search engine. Now, remember, a good website is already planned out. So that's the thing. If you're doing your sitemap and adjusting your sitemap later, you didn't plan your website out too well, okay? It's okay to update it whenever you need to create new pages and new content. But if you're consistently updating it, you should have planned your website out better first. That's the first thing whenever you do and design a website. Plan your website first. All right, next we're going to talk about creative design and branding standards. Websites, as you know, are now a marketing tool, and pages must be designed to meet those demands. What is a web page but another form of marketing to market your company and your product? A marketing specialist's goal is to establish the name and the brand recognition. Remember, we talked about a good way to gain business and recognition is by using catchwords, phrases, and sounds. Okay? You have to have clear branding standards with marketing goals and strategies. If you don't have a clear goal in mind, your website is not going to be able to support the marketing that the company is trying to do. All right, design and branding standards meetings. Goodness, it's a mouthful. All right, when you meet with your company's team, you'll usually focus on the following: your target markets, who you're trying to actively advertise and market towards, your market messages, what you're trying to convey and what you're trying to say in your marketing, your media choices, how are you going to display your marketing, any color combinations that you need to include, any sales strategies, like what are you trying to market towards, and what are you trying to promote, and any technologies that you may want to use. Remember, you're going to be writing your HTML code to fit your organizational goals. All right, next we're going to talk about audience development techniques. This is going to be talking about how to sort of market your website around your audience. First thing is you're going to provide standard website features like properly placed content. You're also going to do unique website features, things from the web team and other company areas that are going to really make your website sparkle and shine. You want to make sure that you use logos and other images used by the company. You want to coordinate your efforts with marketing. Does the site look like it's marketing materials? This is important. And you also want to make sure that you're tracking your user visits to see popular and unpopular sections. If it's an unpopular section, how can you make it popular, or do you even need it? You can also analyze and interpret statistics to increase efficiency. Remember, an efficient web page gets people the information that they need quickly and easily. You can also work with sales and marketing to obtain input about the features, like what is the customer response to certain pages or certain features on the website. Next few slides are going to talk about additional techniques that you can use beyond what I talked about. The first one is push technology. This is one you might be familiar with, especially if you are on a mailing list for a company or like a shop. This automatically provides information to a customer list, and usually the customer requests that he or she be added. Okay, you sign up for it via email. Mailing list servers is talked about in the text, and this is an automatic process which the email server sends emails to a list of users. It's marketing. Okay, whenever you get an email from your favorite store, they're using a mailing list. Okay, but remember, too much can be perceived as junk mail. We had push, now we have pull technology. Pull technology provides information to a customer upon request. This is mostly done in the form of downloads, where a user will go to a website, find a file or an advertisement, and download it from the website or email to the person's computer or device. This is pull technology. You are pulling the information from a source. Next is visitor tracking. And visitor tracking is anything that involves the number of visitors connected to the site or specific pages, the length of time visitors remained at the site or on specific pages, and the frequency a specific visitor returns. Remember, we talked about IP addresses in previous units. Your IP address is traceable, and a good site tracking will be able to determine your IP address, where you're located, and it can also tell how long you spend on that page and if that IP address keeps returning. Okay, good visitor tracking has and can do that information. You can also use cookies to determine how often the users visit the site, and you can also you can track viewing the log files of the website. Next, we're going to talk about portals. Portals are websites that act as central access points for other websites. This allows you to go to other places. There are two types of portals. There's vertical and horizontal portals. First one is vertical portals. These are dedicated to one specific interest or field. It's also called a vortal. Each linked site maintains a topical focus, meaning it's about a specific thing. Intranets and extranets are examples of vertical portals, and intranets and intranets are sometimes called corporate portals. These are your websites that are linked and have a specific focus on a specific topic. However, horizontal is the exact opposite. These are links to website with no particular focus. You're usually using your search engines here. There are links to other sites, but all the links are diverse, variety of topics, variety of subjects. They all go in a bunch of different ways. Search engines are mostly found here. Some benefits to portals that can be beneficial because it can direct them to a particular topic and help user find information and products faster. It can also help a website find customers. And it can help position its brand, improve brand recognition, and strengthen the brand. Because once you get that information out there that you appeal to a certain interest, you're able to find people who are looking for that similar interest. Next is wiki sites. This is a rather old technology in web design, but it's still around, although not used as frequently. A wiki is a website that allows users to collaborate in its construction. Think of a website that is actively open for others to edit. You can create the basics of it and lock some portions of it, but the user can contribute to it and essentially create their own pages. You can create an information repository or a portal. Wikis use specialized web-based software that allows any visitor to update the site. Some pages can be locked for editing, like the main page, while others can be open for public editing or permitted editing, where you must have permission to edit or be a member of that wiki. I've used wikis quite a few times. They were really popular when I was going through my undergraduate degree, and I did use them in part of my graduate degree as well. It's really nice because you can create your own website as a group and collaborate and kind of create unique pages online without having to do the HTML code. The last thing that the text talks about is documenting changes. It's always important that you keep a running document of your changes, especially on the front end. Make sure you keep a written record. Remember which changes have been made to the code. You can always put comments in your code as well to help you out. Make sure you publish security updates to the web server. Your web server is essentially a nice fancy computer, and you want to make sure that it's consistently updated, and any security updates are pushed through as soon as you can. Okay. Make sure you provide evidence of good faith efforts to ensure accessibility. Remember, you need to try your best to be accessible. Are you going to get it 100% all of the time? No, but you must be accommodating in some way, shape, or form. Also, make sure you verify that you have filled requests from departments in your organization. All right, that's going to do it for this lesson.